In this lesson, we will learn about two elements which add absolutely zero semantic meaning to our code, yet are still incredibly valuable for adding bits of additional structure to our pages here and there. These elements' names are div and span. First, let's discuss the div element. In earlier lessons, we learned about elements named header, footer, article, and these elements are all intuitively named. They have a very specific job and purpose, and they are used to break up the page into meaningful chunks. The div element is similar to these elements in that it is used to divide up the page into chunks. However, it has no semantic meaning. It's not used only for headers, it's not used only for footers, it's not used only for articles. It's a very general purpose, one size fits all, use it whenever you see fit type of element. When there's no semantic element that will do the job, we use the div element as a fallback. Its name div stands for division, so it's really a one size fits all way to create a section or division of content within your page. The reason that we as web developers want our pages to be made up of so many different sections and subsections is because it makes styling the pages with CSS much easier. Now, we have not covered CSS yet in this course, but we know that CSS is how we add style and layout and presentational preferences to our pages. So let me show you a quick example of when I would use a div element in this example page that we've seen in previous lessons. So here is the first article, and we remember that this section is in the header element, and this section is in the footer element, but the actual content is not in a subsection. So let's hop over to the code really quickly that's creating this content. Here's where the article element begins. Here's the header. Here's the footer. And here's the actual meat and potato content. Now, even though we have not learned CSS yet, so we have not learned how to add style or layout to our pages, you can imagine that a web developer might want to style the actual body content of the article differently. So perhaps that means adding a background color or adding extra space around it. So this is where the div element comes into play. We can wrap this body content of the article in a div element. So there's the start tag, here's the end tag, and then we can give the div a class. We use the class attribute, and then we provide a name. So I could name this anything that I'd like, as long as I don't include a space in the name. So I'll name this div, or this division, article body. Now this has absolutely no semantic value. We just invented this class named article body. And in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to use this. In a perfect world, there would be an element named article body. But there isn't. So instead, we use the div element when there's not a dedicated element to do the job, or when we need an additional container or hook or element for styling and layout purposes. So we've covered div, now let's discuss span. If the div element is a non-semantic version of header, footer, and article, these block level elements that we can use to chunk up the page, then span is a non-semantic version of strong or em. So for example, what if we wanted the word ipsum? Here it is in the text editor, here it is in the browser. What if we wanted this word that's within a paragraph to be styled a certain way? Let's imagine that ipsum was the name of our company, and for marketing or branding reasons, we needed it to be a particular color. So we needed a way to differentiate it from the rest of the text in the paragraph. We've seen examples of inline elements in the past. So we've seen strong, but this carries semantic weight with it. This implies that this word has strong importance. So we don't want to use this element because we don't want that semantic meaning. We're only coloring or styling this word for marketing reasons or branding reasons, which means the em tag, which stands for adding emphasis, also doesn't seem like the right tag. We don't want to emphasize the word. We simply want to target it so we can style it differently. So that's where the span element comes into play. It has no semantic meaning. It's not implying anything about this word. Then we can simply add a class to the element named brand color or any other name that we want to make up. And then we can target this word with CSS at a later date. And we can apply any styles that we would need to add. And that will conclude this lesson. To review, we learned about two elements, div and span. One is a block level element, the other is an inline element, and neither of them carry any semantic meaning. For the moment, you don't need to worry too much about these elements, but I want them to be on your radar because eventually, down the road, when you begin learning CSS, these elements will become important. I'll see you in the next lesson.